Hi, it's Kristen and it's time for another Feminist Friday. So if you don't know, my Feminist Friday vlogs are where I read books by women, about their lives, about like society, feminism, sexism, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes I read fiction, sometimes I read non-fiction. Today I'm going to be reading a non-fiction, and that is Witches, Sluts, Feminists by Kristen J. Sollee. This I got from a charity shop. I saw it on the shelves, it caught my attention because it was like taller than the other books and the black and the yellow contrast caught my eye, and then I saw that it was called Witches, Sluts, Feminists. The title definitely caught my attention. And up here we have the tagline of Conjuring the Sex Positive. And this is basically just a book about witches, sluts, and feminists. And it takes each of those things and looks at different topics through like the lens of this. I think we get like historical context and modern interpretations, and each chapter is just about like a different topic, different subject. So some of the ones on the contents page that immediately sound interesting to me are things like political witch, rebellion and revolution, the spell of seduction, sex work and the sacred whore, queering the witch, porn, pleasure and representation, undressing the witch, fashion, style and sartorial spells, witchcraft on screen, living deliciously, the coven, crafting feminist community, music witch, sound as sorcery, hex cells, feminism, capitalism and the witch, and tech witch, online activism and the digital mystic. And like there's various other things that seem interesting. It does seem like it has a US slant on it. I'm assuming the author is from the US, so that will be, I guess, interesting to read from like an outside perspective as someone who lives in the UK. But I'm hoping it generally doesn't lean too much towards like just being about the US, because I think it sounds really interesting. But yeah, so all those topics sound interesting to me. There's some like cool illustrations throughout, not many, but a couple here and there. And the back has like a whole section about all the works that the author has cited, so the reading she did for this, and yeah, the works that she cited. So I think after I read this, if there's a particular topic or subject or thing that I'm interested in reading about further, I think that's a great resource to have in here. I can check out any like further reading, because this is quite a thin book, so I think we are just gonna get like basic introductory kind of conversations about each of these topics, nothing too in-depth, but generally I think this sounds really interesting. Really excited to delve into this one, and I will let you know what I think of it as I'm reading, as I go along, and if anything in particular strikes like an interesting thought or discussion or anything. So I've been reading Witches, Sluts, Feminists, and I'm really enjoying it so far. It's making me feel smart because some facts and stuff given, I'm like, I knew that already. But I also feel like I'm learning things, like little tidbits here and there. I've read the intro, I've read the stuff that's like witches through time, like medieval to modern. I've read about like Salem's legacy, and then I've read about midwives. I'm getting to the bits which I think are more US centric, which might be interesting because I'm obviously not from the US, so I guess I'll learn stuff. But the sort of chapters and sections after that are the bits I'm really looking forward to, because it's about like witches and sex, witches and feminism, witches and capitalism, and then the representation of witches on like the screen and in music and media and stuff like that, which I'm really looking forward to. But yeah, I'm enjoying it, and it's nice to read non-fiction. I feel like I've not read a non-fiction that's actually like about a subject as a whole in a while. So yeah, I'm liking this. I'm glad I picked it up. So I'm on the part of this that's about the political witch rebellion and revolution, and the author's just like talking about some like notable women who maybe have ties to like witchcraft, or at least like spiritualism and things like that. And she's talking about people that I've heard of before, like Susan B. Anthony and Sojourner Truth. But then it's interesting to hear about women that I've not heard of, but that I really feel like I should have. Like Victoria Woodhull, who was the first woman to ever run for President of the United States. And I feel like that's a huge thing. And I don't know that I've ever heard of her, or if I have, it's not been enough that it's ever stuck in my brain. So, like, that's kind of wild. But she sounds interesting, and I'm sort of thinking I'm going to make note of some of these women and maybe look into them a bit further afterwards. So yeah, just the things I'm learning, man. So I read more of Witches, Sluts, Feminists, and one of the chapters I've read has been about like the 2016 election, because this book came out between the 2016 election and now, and so they're talking about like Hillary Clinton and how she was positioned as like a witch, like, you know, all the references to like witch hunts and like how misogynistic that campaign was, and like how the term like nasty woman was used, and then like people tried to reclaim it and stuff, and it's just like this is not the best time to read this. It's just fucking depressing reading about like all the shit that Donald Trump did and said then, and knowing that he was like president then, and now he's fucking president-elect again. Like, ugh. So mad. So mad. This is the problem with feminism. It just like ignites a rage in you that just makes you pissed off with like the world, because of how the world works under like patriarchy, and just angry all the time. And like, isn't that depressing? My god. Anyway, so I read about the art witch, which was talking about like woodcuts and art of witches done by like men and then by women, and how those depictions differ. And it was interesting because I was like googling the art as it was mentioned, and like so I could have like an image reference, and something that's just kind of crazy, just depictions of women just having sex with demons and devils in weird positions. But there was one art piece which I looked up and like is by a man, Witches Going to Their Sabbath, which is an 1878 painting by Luis Ricardo Valero. But like, it's sick. It's kind of sick as a painting. I love it. It's just like all these women like riding goats going to the Sabbath. I just think it's a cool painting. Like, sure, they're all naked, because that's what witches and women are like. But as a painting in itself, I kind of love it. I would want it like as an art piece on my wall, if I'm being completely honest. Anyway, now the next chapter is Ghost Bitch USA, which I think, I'm just glancing at it now, might be like an exhibition or something. We'll see how that is. And then I think we get into like more sort of like actual like spell stuff, not like actual spells, but talking about witches in terms of like doing spells and magic and things like that. And then we get into like witches and representation in like fashion, music, movies, or just like media, things like that, which I'm excited about. So yeah, wanna get through a bit more of this now and hopefully finish it soon. What I appreciate about this book is that it talks about like sex and sexuality and like masturbation and things like that, which I feel like a lot of non-fiction feminist books about like just women and their selves and their bodies and stuff does. But this also talked about like sex work and porn and stuff in a nuanced and also like positive way. I feel like when other feminist non-fiction that I've read addresses sex work and stuff, it's just sort of looking at the dangers of it, or like, can porn ever be feminist and stuff. Whereas this, while it does acknowledge that like some people who do sex work don't actually want to be in sex work and it's a dangerous sort of profession to have, and like there is very questionable porn out there, and like porn comes from a very patriarchal place, it also talks about sex work as like a positive thing that can be empowering if it's something you choose to do, and that there are more like feminist porn companies now that are more about like casting diversely and paying their workers like a good wage and having very secure sets and things like that. And she talks to sex workers and people in the porn industry in here, who also identify as like witches or who have some sort of spiritual connection in that way, and so who talk about the way that they connect to sex through their like spirituality or witchiness and stuff. And so I think it's a lot more nuanced than a lot of feminist nonfiction often is when talking about sex and sexuality and stuff like that. So I appreciated it for that. So finished reading Witches, Sluts, Feminists. This is one that I meant to read really quickly. I thought I'd get it done in like the first couple of weeks of October, and then I ended up like reading it over 2 months or 1.5 months. I read the first half of it from like beginning of October to like mid to late November, and then I read the entire other half of it in a day. I think it's one of those ones that takes me longer to read because of the content. Like a lot of it obviously talking about like sexism and misogyny, and like within that sometimes sexual assault and rape and really intense topics like that. So while it was really interesting when I was reading it, I was often not like, I want to pick that up because that will put me in a good mood. So it just is one of those ones that I feel like, even though it is so short and I thought I could read it really quickly, actually I needed to take my time with in the end. But yeah, I think I give this like a 3.75, 4 stars maybe. It was very informative. I feel like I learned stuff about history, about like the historical context of witches, in like media, in art, in like a political historical context, which was all very interesting. I loved segments about like media representation and music and fashion and that kind of thing. That's like my interest anyway. I'm really interested in like the arts, so those bits really appealed to me. But then I also loved how it talked about like witchiness in terms of like activism and community and like female friendship and rebellion and things like that. So yeah, if you're interested in like witches, whether you fully believe in like witchcraft as a concept or you just find it an interesting topic, I would really recommend this one, especially if you're interested in it in relation to like sex and sex positivity and women's bodies and things like of that nature. Yeah, I really liked this one. I don't know if the author has done any other like non-fiction stuff, but I would be interested in looking into that because I thought she wrote in a really accessible way, and cited like all her sources and stuff like that. So yeah, really glad I finally read this one and would recommend it. So thank you so much for watching this Feminist Friday. I'll see you soon with another video. Bye!